and welcome to North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. Today, we're diving into the impact of customer trends and evolving food preferences on ag markets, from shifting demographics to packaging innovation. They're all shaping consumer decisions, and these changes are creating a ripple effect across the supply chain. My guest today is a leading voice in these trends. She's VP and Senior Packaging Analyst at Rabobank, where she provides deep insights into packaging, logistics, cold storage, and consumer driven change across North America. With over a decade of experience and a master's degree from Cornell, she's also a frequent speaker at major conferences around the world. In fact, this September, she'll be presenting on this very topic: impact of consumer trends and food preference and the evolution on ag markets at the Women and Agribusiness Summit. And that'll be held in Orlando, Florida, coming up soon. From Toronto, Ontario, Canada, my homeland, I would like to welcome Xinnan Li. So great to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Chrissy. It's such a great honor to join you on this podcast.
Awesome. So can you start by telling us about your background, your role at Rabobank, and what you focus on as the Senior Packaging Analyst?
Sure. So, the food and ag sector is what Rabobank does. This is completely what we focus on outside of the Netherlands, but it's not actually my training. I started majoring in biology. I'm super excited about science, but afterwards, I thought I want to do something more applied, and then moved on to, food science, and that's how I really got connected to the food industry. I'm a huge foodie. I love to eat, and looking at food or the ag markets on a day-to-day basis as your job isn't a bad idea either. So this is how I got into Rabobank. Started as a consumer foods and beverage analyst, looking at what's going on with food industry. Looking at we have quite a lot of colleagues focused on what's going on with the ag market as well. We have analysts looking at dairy, animal protein, poultry, beef, fertilizer. And specifically, I cover more downstream, more on the packaging side, and as well as logistics. So really, with the entire Rabo research team, we cover the entire food and ag supply chain. And of course, consumer trends, food preferences really has a huge impact on our food and ag industry as general.
Yeah, exactly. And from your perspective, what makes Rabobank uniquely positioned to track these shifts across global ag markets?
Well, I think this really dates back to our roots. So Rabobank was founded over 100 years ago by Dutch farmers. So the Holland is a very agriculture-focused country. So I think with that history, we're really well connected to the farmers, not only just in Netherlands, but also with farmers globally. So right now in North America, we have financing specifically focused on the farm gate, but we also are very connected to the large corporates in the food and ag supply chain. So really, I think we're able to provide an end-to-end solution to our customers, whether they are farmers, whether they're distributors, wholesalers, or also CPG, food and ag corporates.
Yeah, wow, that is a lot. So, how are shifting demographics like Gen Z's buying power influencing today's food market?
Really, I guess there are a lot of moving pieces here. If we're looking at Gen Z specifically, they are buying local more and more. They like to buy organics. They like to buy local produce. So I think from that perspective, that's shifting slowly where our food can be grown, or where they're able to make a higher margin for our food can be grown. But at the same time, in the last couple of years, in the last 6 months specifically, I think the erosion of buying power really has on this disproportionately affected the younger consumers. So when the disposable income is kind of weakened, then we're seeing the organic berries or local produce. Some of them come at a higher price. Usually they're often cut first. So definitely a lot of moving pieces. Some of those are longer trends, like looking for healthier, looking for organic, looking for local produce. But at a shorter term, I think some of those higher price categories are going to be negatively impacted just because consumers' wallet are tighter.
Yeah, for sure. And what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in food preference, like over the past 5 years? Is it mostly this buying power, or are there other factors?
Now, I guess I do want to point out how important the changing buying power really
Mhm.
negatively affected consumers across um, all demographics. If we're looking at the wage growth for the past since 2022, wage growth has averaged at about 12%. But if we're looking at CPI for food at home, it's also at about 12%. So that's okay. But when we're looking at CPI, which is the inflation index for food away from home, we're looking at 18%. And on top of that, we have shelter CPI for 18% as well. So that really is, I think, taking a big heavy toll on restaurants, on food service. And we're seeing the higher end, the fine dining restaurants being disproportionately impacted by this trend as well. And if we're looking at how that's going to impact the ag producers, just as an example, when you're going out to eat a steak versus the burgers you cook at home, those are different cuts of meat, right? So the higher end, more premium piece of cuts of meat are disproportionately impacted by this trend in the past few years. Um,
Yeah, great points. Yeah. And w- so, how is convenience? I guess probably over the last 20 years, convenience has been driving food choices. And what has that meant for packaging and supply chain logistics?
Convenience has always been top five for purchasing choices. It's a long-term trend. It's going to be here to stay. In terms of convenience and how that plays into food choices, if we're looking at the packaged food, yeah, there has been I guess tremendous growth for single serve packaged food or the to go products. If we're looking at breakfast bar, that's quite a few years ago, kind of the rise
Mhm.
of breakfast bar, nutrition bar. But now, if we're tying with another trend, the GLP-1, the anti-obesity medication, a lot of the consumers are on these medication now, and they're looking for a quick bite. They're looking for smaller portion size. So convenience and the smaller portion size all plays together in the sense that yes, there's likely less amount of food being packaged, but there's more packaging being used. There's more single serve, smaller or portion controlled products on the shelf now, and they're definitely gaining more popularity among our consumers.
Oh, that's something I had not thought of at all. Was yeah, that's right. With the weight loss injections, that is, I I guess if you're not feeling hunger, you're not going to go out and buy a whole bunch of groceries and spend a long time cooking it. Wow, I never thought of that. That is a
Exactly.
really interesting point.
Yeah, and not just that, they're consuming less, they're consuming um definitely they're consuming less proportions, but they could be consuming more frequently because they're not as hungry. But at the same time, they do need the nutrition, the protein, the energy to power them throughout their day. So the food industry really needs to respond to these kind of consumer behavior changes.
Yeah, for sure. And when you speak about the local movement, um, I know sometimes it's not as efficient to grow, obviously, a tomato in Ontario as it is, in January as it is in Florida.
Right.
So as we become more local, is this a lasting trend? What will happen? the logistics and the cold storage is one thing I think about, where you're bringing that tomato from Florida or are you growing it in a greenhouse. Um, it's likely the same, climate footprint for both of those, heating up a greenhouse in Toronto or moving it from Florida. So what kind of things are you seeing in that? Are people really digging into the impacts of local, or what are you seeing?
So from what we're seeing, the local is definitely, I think, gaining popularity with among consumers. And back to what we talked about at the start of the podcast, it is disproportionately gaining popularity among the younger, the Gen Z, the millennial consumers. And as our population ages, the millennials, the Gen Zs are becoming a bigger proportion of our population. So as a population, for a population as a whole, I think the local produce really is a concept that's here to stay. But when we're looking at, the carbon footprint of growing products in climates where they're not native to, that's definitely something we need to think about. And I'm not an expert on this subject, but
Mhm.
definitely we have a lot of rubber research analysts that looks into, what's going on with greenhouses, what's going on with food or produce that's imported from Central and South America. And there's definitely a growing trend of imports as well.
Yeah, wow. So many angles to think about.
For sure.
So one thing I'm really interested about your background is your experience in packaging. My background is marketing, so packaging is very important. So do you see packaging as a driver of consumer choice, or is it a response to it?
Very interesting thinking. I think packaging really is a integrated piece of
Oh yeah.
marketing and branding. Before a consumer reach for the product on the shelf, they're not really touching the products. They're touching the packaging of the product, with exception of some produce, I guess. So I think packaging now, especially um, with the population growth being pretty stagnant in developing countries, I would say, with volume growth being really challenging. Food and ag companies are really trying to shift their focus to value growth, and packaging can play a role in the value growth, whether it's just pure marketing, which is completely fine. It's a uh, it's a method to convey your brand image and brand vision. But packaging could also be so many other things. It could be the traditional plastic packaging, but it could also be, used. It could also be made of biodegradable packaging or compostable packaging or recyclable packaging. All of this, how you choose your packaging, and we're increasingly seeing that more in startups. How you choose your packaging really conveys your brand story
True.
as
And
well.
your values, I guess, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think understanding who your audience is, or who your customers are, and what kind of packaging they would want to see. Because in the end of the day, when they buy the product, they use the product, but then they're left with packaging, right? We all hate to deal with over packaged things because we have to pay to get rid of them. So what brands choose to use as their packaging, what brands choose to put on the graphics to put on the packaging is extremely important.
Yeah, yeah, great points. And what about the technology of packaging? I know there's so many, just seeing at trade shows, you can see that the technology of packing produce, especially, is enhancing freshness and flavor. I would assume that can't, is that consumer driven, or is that the company is like, oh, here's a good technology, let's try it.
I think definitely consumer plays a role, the company plays a role, sometimes the regulator plays a role.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, the regulator too.
for sure. So with the packaging, we can look at packaging as a cost, right? Because it is sometimes, besides your raw material product cost, packaging very often is one of your largest costs, whether it's, plastic shrink wrap trays or corrugated boxes. So
Mm.
on one side, packaging as part of a branding material, it could help drive your sales. But on the other side, packaging could help protect your product. It could help reduce waste. It could help reduce your cost of goods sold by keeping your produce fresh longer with the modified atmosphere methods. A lot of times packaging is a cost itself, and we're trying to kind of a lot of the companies are really motivated by minimizing their packaging costs and just making their operation as efficient as possible. So in terms of a technology perspective, there are definitely a lot of packaging technologies out there. Um, but back to the cost issue, not all of the packaging technology out there are being commercialized right now because of the higher cost it would add onto our product.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Um, I know this is more an American issue, I think, but and not to get political, but when we are seeing this MAHA movement kind of move across
Mhm.
North America, and I haven't seen it yet, but are you seeing some evolution towards supporting that movement? I would assume that consumers are starting to think along those lines and think, for example, the seed oil debate, right? Are people looking now at these? I don't know if they're political words or trigger words or whatever. And are you seeing some of that action yet?
I think we're seeing things to slowly change, but definitely not at a big scale yet. My colleague was at the Expo West, the Natural Expo West, earlier
Oh,
this
okay.
year, and from what he said, his observation was the mention of the Maha movement was largely absent. So
Oh, okay. Huh.
at a I think industry level. So, but
Mm.
a lot of the changes really happens from a regulator perspective. This is,
Yeah.
added sugar has been had bad raps for a very long time, but this is the first time where, we're hearing from a health secretary that
Mm.
sugar is poison, and there really is um, a push towards more natural dyes, the concept of real food. So we actually do identify a pretty large opportunity for this industry,
Mhm.
changing from whether it's for processors or growers of let's say natural dye products. So we're identifying about a 2 billion opportunity for this industry. And we do think that, there's going to be a slow change. Maybe will take some time for the industry to catch on, um, and but the opportunity is huge.
Right. And thinking of producers as they're planning, making their 5, 10 year plan, and you take those two things, healthier food and then also lower budgets, I wonder can they fit into those opportunities that will become opportunities, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for whether it's producers or processors,
Mm.
when still in the next couple of years, when they, the budget's a little tighter, definitely focus on, looking at your own operational efficiency, right? Trying to stay afloat, trying to minimize your own cost, but definitely looking beyond those 2 years into the next 5 to 10 years, looking at products that fit in with this, let's say the natural dye movement,
Mhm.
consumers that are on GLP-1 and are looking to eat more protein and produce. So position your investments in those areas.
Yeah, very interesting. And so what would be some of the risks that producers should watch out for right now in this kind of changing time?
I think one risk is always, the egg market has cycles. Doesn't matter if you're looking into the protein space, nut space, or produce space, maybe a little bit less so. But whenever there's a big opportunity, there tends to be a lot of investors coming into this place or growers rushing into this space, and it takes a couple of years for the crop to grow or the products to actually become viable. And then, but in a couple of years' time, the market would have already turned. So, I mean, it is that's how our history's been, and the history tends to repeat itself. But definitely just
Right.
to be aware that, maybe take that, planting time, all of those into account, and
Mhm.
have a more realistic, um, I guess, understanding of the market, right? The nuts price are high today, but in 2 years' time, they might be completely different. So definitely,
Yeah.
understanding the market really well is important.
Yeah, for sure. And do you see any of these trends affecting, trade and international demand?
We do see, as from a produce perspective, we're importing basically domestic production of produce is pretty flat, and a lot of the growth are coming from imports. So,
Mm.
if we're depending more and more on foreign imports, then trade is definitely going to have an impact. And in terms of exports, yeah, we do export a lot of animal protein to different countries, and the
Mhm.
trade relations with other countries definitely would have an impact over there as well. So I think those are the policy risk, geopolitical risk is here to stay regardless of who is in office right now. So uh, we do think that we're entering a period of heightened geopolitical volatility. And from that
Mhm.
perspective, trade is going to uh, be a lot more volatile for those that are, solely um, supported by the export or import market.
Right. That totally makes sense. And then looking ahead, what do you think will be the most defining consumer driven change over the next 5, 10 years?
Ooh.
Just look into your crystal ball.
Well, if we're looking at the next 5 to 10 years, I want to say demographic changes, right? Those are
Mhm.
long-term change that's here to stay. Our population is aging, and it's not just for the US, not just for Canada. We're seeing that in developing countries, China as well, but we're even seeing birth rate decline in India and Africa as well. So it is a global issue that our population's aging, and as people age, they have different food requirements. They may eat at different times. They eat at different frequency. They eat in different outlets, or maybe they shop at different supermarkets or grocery stores. So that's one thing. And at the same time, our population is getting more diverse. Specifically, we're just looking at, US, Canada, the North America region. Our population, um, what our population looks like today is going to be very different from what our population looks like in the next 5 to 10 years. So there is more demand for global flavors, whether
Right.
it's
Yeah.
from Central South America or Asian countries. So the flavor profile, the specific products or produce, cuts of meat being consumed may change as well. So this is a long-term trend that's here to stay. And I think definitely producers, growers, processors should take that into account in planning, where your next 5 to 10 years is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It totally makes sense. And if you had one piece of advice for producers and even in agribusiness, watching consumer behavior, what would it be?
That is a great question. One piece of advice. I would say to stay true to your operations, to your products, and to your consumers. Um, I think at this day and age, being being transparent about your operations, tell the consumer your stories. Consumers, I mean, yeah, consumers love local products, but they are also okay if they know, let's say in states thousands of miles away, this is how your products are grown. Tell consumers your story, and I think consumers are willing to buy into that.
Yeah, I love that a lot. And, in marketing, that's the whole thing is to tell that story and bring it to a place of relevancy with the consumer, right? So yeah, I think that's great. And it's
Absolutely,
a big challenge in agriculture because there's always a processor in between. And generally there's a processor in between. So it is tough to get that story from farm to table.
for
But
sure.
yeah, I totally agree with you there. So, y as I mentioned before, you're going to be at the Women in Agribusiness Summit um, in Orlando. And can you give us a little sneak peek of what you'll be covering in your presentation? We probably covered some of it today, but yeah, give us a little sneak peek of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think we covered a lot of what's going to be my presentation today. What's in my presentation, I think you're going to be seeing more data. We talked a lot about, stories, anecdotes today, but it's definitely going to be more data driven. So we're going to be looking at, the demographic changes, the MAHA movement, GLP-1, how that's impacting people's diet, and we're going to be looking at the disposable income change, and we're going to be looking at how trade tariffs is disproportionately impacting our lower to middle income consumers compared to the higher income group. So there's going to be
Mm.
a more severe bifurcation of consumers that we're seeing.
Oh, yes, I see. And then my final question for you, why do you personally do what you do? What wakes you up in the morning and excites you? And what did God put you on this earth to accomplish?
Wow, it's I mean it's hard. I love the food industry. Sometimes I'm an analyst, so I make a lot of slides. And when I
Mm.
put on the slides, a burger, sometimes it's the packaging for chips, sometimes it's packaging for coffee. That's really fun. The data, can get repetitive, and I think the day-to-day work can get a little boring, but whenever I actually connect what I do back to the food itself, yeah, as a foodie, I think you just can't complain.
I love that. Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Such great information.
Thank you, Chrissy. It was a great time chatting with you.
And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, the links are provided in the show notes. If you'd like to hear more, don't miss Xinan's presentation at the Women in Agribusiness Summit in Orlando, Florida. And don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Listen Notes. If you prefer video, we're also on Rumble, or really wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like this episode, I would love it if you shared it. And have a great day.